Ever feel like keeping up with the news is just information overload?
Oh, definitely. Especially when reactions start flying fast.
Exactly. 1 minute you think you've got a handle on something, and then bam, there's this whole other layer of commentary.
Right.
So today we're trying to cut through some of that noise. We're diving into the recent buzz around Brazil's First Lady, Janja.
There's certainly been a lot of talk.
Yeah, and we've got a few different angles here. We've got some pretty strong words from one presenter, some bits from an interview with Janja herself, and then some analysis from another commentator.
A good mix of direct reaction and more measured takes.
Our mission really is just to pull out the key threads for you, give you the context, what's being said, why it seems to matter, without you having to wade through absolutely everything.
And I think what strikes you right away, looking at this material, is the intensity of some of the initial reactions.
You mean the presenter we mentioned?
Yeah, exactly. He kicks things off with a really impassioned response to Janja's recent statements and actions. Kind of sets a very specific tone.
Oh, absolutely. Impassioned is one word for it. It's pretty much a rant aimed right at her. He keeps hitting this one note that she's, looking out for number one, putting herself before the Brazilian people.
That seems to be the central accusation.
Right. And the language is very informal, lots of colloquial stuff. And he coins this nickname for her as Banja.
Which translates roughly to spender, right? Or maybe lavish spend.
It's something like that, yeah. Spender. It's sarcastic, obviously. Yeah. And his whole tone towards her is just really sharp, quite aggressive even.
That nickname itself is loaded, isn't it? It immediately frames her actions around, alleged extravagance before you even get into specifics.
Sets the stage. And one big flashpoint seems to be her comments about China, specifically how they regulate things like social media and the internet.
Ah, yes, that definitely caused a stir.
Apparently, in an interview, she discussed China's, let's say, strict controls, even on kids' internet use, and didn't really sound alarmed by it.
Well, it touches on that hot debate about digital freedom versus state control, which is, a pretty fundamental tension.
For sure. It sounds like she was maybe downplaying the concerns about it.
Her comments seem to suggest a certain maybe acceptance or understanding of why China might implement such controls, which naturally raises eyebrows when you view it from a perspective that prioritizes free expression online.
Right. And this presenter jumps all over that. His reaction is pure sarcasm.
Suggesting she wants the same in Brazil.
Basically, yeah. He implies she'd love to see similar oppressive measures, his words, not mine, brought into Brazil. He even quotes her saying something like, it's not a question of freedom of expression in China.
Okay.
And his immediate comeback is, it's freedom of oppression. So very black and white there.
It really highlights that clash, doesn't it, between, say, prioritizing order and control versus prioritizing individual liberty, especially online.
Definitely. Then the focus shifts a bit to President Lula and healthcare promises.
Ah, yes. The statement about access to medical exams.
Right. He apparently said the poor would get the same access to medical exams as he does. And, well, the presenter wasn't buying that either.
To really get why that sparked such a reaction, you need to think about Brazil's public healthcare system, the SUS.
It's supposed to be universal, right?
In principle, yes. But in practice, many people face long waits, difficulty accessing specialists, resource shortages. There are significant challenges.
Exactly. And the presenter uses that reality to fuel his sarcasm. He basically says, sure, the system exists, but the experience is vastly different for most people.
So the promise rings hollow to him.
Completely. He mocks the idea of just getting the same exams. He says sarcastically, everyone should have access to the same hospitals as the president, and he specifically names Syrio-Libanese,
which is a very well-known, high-end private hospital.
Precisely. So his point is that promising equal exams means nothing if the actual quality of care and access is worlds apart. He scoffs when Lula calls it respect and the conquest of rights.
It taps right into that public frustration about perceived inequality in essential services. He's using Lula's words to highlight the gap between, the political elite's experience and the average citizen's reality.
Okay, so let's circle back to that Janja interview. She was asked directly, wasn't she, if she felt any discomfort talking about China's regulations while on an official trip.
Yes, and her response was quite dismissive.
Yeah, of course not, folks. Something along those lines. But the presenter, he reads a lot into her body language.
It's always tricky interpreting nonverbals, isn't it? So much is subjective.
True. But he claims her glancing away, licking her lips. He paints these as signs she was nervous, maybe not being entirely truthful.
Suggesting the confident answer might be masking something else.
That's the implication, yeah. Again, his interpretation. Then the interview apparently shifted to Janja, talking about the downsides of her public role.
The hardships. This part seemed to draw quite a bit of fire, too.
You could say that. She mentions things like, the stress of picking outfits, having to do her own hair sometimes, difficulty with makeup because she needs glasses.
And the reaction was probably one of perceived disconnect?
Oh, big time. The presenter just lays on the sarcasm thick, feigning this over-the-top sympathy for her sufferings. He clearly frames these as totally trivial complaints compared to what ordinary Brazilians deal with. It comes across as very out of touch in his telling.
And wasn't there a comparison made to the previous First Lady?
Yes, he throws in a dig at Michelle Bolsonaro, too, something about her traveling with a big entourage, maybe implying Janja's complaints are hypocritical or just tone deaf.
So it brings in that political dimension, the comparison between styles and approaches to the First Lady role.
Exactly. Okay, so that's the presenter's take. But then we have this other analysis from Eli Vieira.
Right, Vieira offers a somewhat different perspective, more analytical.
He also flags Janja's comments on China's regulations as problematic for a democracy.
Yes, he focuses more on the potential political or diplomatic implications, rather than just the immediate emotional reaction. He's looking at the bigger picture for the government's image.
And he notes that this isn't the first time she's brought up China's internet model, right?
Correct. He points out she's mentioned it before and suggests this repetition could actually be counterproductive for the government, raising questions unnecessarily, perhaps.
Interesting. He also brings up the fact that Janja has an official office and staff paid for by taxpayers.
Yes, he highlights that despite her not having an elected political role, she has this publicly funded setup, which he identifies as a point of, let's say, public debate or potential criticism.
It raises that whole question, doesn't it, about the role and resources of a first lady or first spouse in a democracy. It's not unique to Brazil.
Absolutely. It's a recurring discussion in many places. What's appropriate support versus personal staff, influence versus official power.
Vieira also mentions her travel habits, sometimes going ahead of the main presidential group.
Yeah, he notes that and speculates it might be a strategic move, perhaps to manage press attention or shape the narrative around her presence.
So managing her image, basically.
Potentially, yes. That's the interpretation offered.
Yeah.
He also touches on what he terms a possible reputation dispute between Janja and Michelle Bolsonaro.
So hinting at an ongoing rivalry or comparison in the public eye.
Exactly. Suggesting there's this dynamic playing out between the current and former first ladies. It adds another layer to how Janja's actions might be perceived.
Okay, so let's try and pull this together. We've seen this really intense, critical reaction, especially from that one presenter, focusing on Janja's perceived self-interest and her comments on China.
Driven by concerns about democratic values clashing with authoritarian models, it seems.
Right. Then there's the sharp criticism of Lula's healthcare promises, using them to highlight the deep-seated issues with inequality and access to quality care in Brazil.
Using the SUS system reality as a counterpoint.
And woven through all this is a broader discussion about Janja herself, her role, her influence, her public comments on personal matters, her official support structure, and how all this affects the government's image.
And how she navigates the public sphere compared to her predecessor.
So it leaves you thinking, doesn't it? What's really driving the intensity of these reactions we're seeing?
That's a great question for you, the listener, to ponder. Is it purely about the specific things said and done? Or does it tap into wider anxieties about the government's direction, about economic pressures, or even just about the evolving role of, well, unelected but highly visible figures in public life?
And how do you balance the different takes, the raw reaction versus the more detached analysis?
Lots to consider there.
Definitely. Well, we hope sorting through these different sources and perspectives has given you a clearer picture of this whole situation, saving you some time and offering some needed context for these ongoing debates.
Hopefully providing some clarity amid the noise.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.